Why should people care about this legislation if they don't already?
Well, my feeling is that, my guess is, based upon the data I've seen, that right-to-work states, that wages and working conditions in right-to-work states are worse than wages and working conditions in non-right-to-work states. That there is a connection economically between the vibrancy and the percentage of the workforce that's unionized and the general working conditions of all workers. So if unions are weaker, the general working conditions, wages of all workers go down as well. And we've seen that over the last 30 years in this country. Union density, the percentage of the workers in unions, has declined dramatically. Union membership peaked in the early 50s, so about a third of the workforce was in unions. And now we're down to 10 or 12%. Well, over the last 30 years, real wages have gone down significantly. And I think there's a connection. So anything that weakens unions doesn't just weaken unions, but weakens the living conditions of all employees, salaried or, shop floor. So I think that's the big picture, and this is just a small part of it, but it relates to the big picture. Politically, the national organizations that have come to the state and have pushed for the right-to-work legislation see a kind of domino theory. If Indiana goes back to right-to-work, then it'll make it a little easier to build a campaign in Michigan, in Ohio, and Illinois, and Wisconsin. And this historically has been the industrial heartland of the country and a high percentage of unionized workers. And I think there are significant political and economic forces in the nation that want to reduce the power of organized labor.
Now, I read something today that the governor said that, I don't know exactly the percentage, but he claimed that, I don't know, if it was maybe 30% loss of businesses because we are not a right-to-work state. Have you heard that, and do you disagree?
Yeah, I heard that, and I forgot if we had talked about it on the phone. I gather protesters down in Indianapolis have asked passing legislators, name me one company that decided not to come here because we don't have right to work, and there's been no evidence provided. Today's article in your sort of media competitor, Journal and Courier, the editorial, made the same claim, that Governor Daniels has claimed that there's been a loss of investment because we were not right-to-work state, and he and the Republican leadership have not provided one iota of evidence. And I think, I forgot if I mentioned to you or someone else on the phone, there's been surveys of CEOs from big companies around the country, asking them what motivates them to consider investment in one or another state. And whether the states were right to work or not is very low on their priorities. They're interested in good roads and solid educational system and other kind of perks that relate to whatever it is they want to produce, manufacture or whatever in the state. And whether the state's right to work or not is not on their agenda.
Now, I know I can't really ask you to tell the future, but based on the climate right now, where do you see all of this going this session? What do you think is going to end up happening?
Well, I wish I knew. I have colleagues in my department who study Indiana politics, but I was just looking this morning at the distribution of power in the two parties in the state legislature in 2008. In the House of Representatives in 2008, there were 52 Democrats and 48 Republicans. The 2010 election shifted control of the House to 60 Republicans, 40 Democrats. The state Senate has always been Republican controlled. As you might remember, there was a time that the governor was a Democrat. Evan Bayh was a very popular Democrat, and since then Mitch Daniels has been a very popular Republican. The short of the story is that with a dramatic shift, particularly since 2010, there's essentially been a shift to the right, and with both the legislature and the governorship controlled by the Republicans, and with the general shift of the Republican Party to the right, we've seen significant pressure to privatize public education, to reduce access to resources for public health, increase attack on Planned Parenthood's provision of reproductive health services and right to work. So on all of the issues that that people like me are concerned about, there's been a shift in the wrong direction, and right to work is just one of them.
You think we'll come out with a right to work bill?
It looks that way. I mean, you know, with both houses with strong Republican majorities and the governor taking a stand, he was a little more ambivalent in the past, but he seems to be taking a strong stand in support of it right now. So it's hard to, you know, it's hard to see anything stopping this, this steamrolling of the legislation. But the workers, the trade unionists, and other concerned citizens feel an obligation at least to express themselves as best they can.
Is there anything else that you think we should report? Obviously, we'll be at the press conference this afternoon, but ahead of the press conference or going into the stories this evening?
Part of my, I also teach international relations, and someone pointed out to me that the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights has 30 articles in it, and 9 of those articles deal with social and economic rights. And Article 23 declares that every human being on the planet has a right to a job and a living wage and the right to be part of a trade union. And so this is not part of the debate that's going on in Indianapolis, but I was struck by the idea that one could, I think, argue that right-to-work laws really contradict this principle of basic human rights that's been enshrined in this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And right-to-work's not the only effort to inhibit the right of workers to be in unions, but there's also efforts to limit the election machinery for workers to decide yes or no on whether their workplace should be unionized and so on. And I guess I do believe, if you look at the long history of America since the Great Depression, that people's health and well-being has been significantly affected by the existence of strong and vibrant trade unions. And I really believe that. So we're really moving in the wrong direction.